All right, welcome everyone. If you're just joining us, my name is Susan Muller. I am the Business Development Manager at BuzzSumo, and I want to welcome you to our webinar today, Tips for Using BuzzSumo. I'm here with Steve Rayson, who is one of our founders and our director. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Susan. Nice to join you. And I'm down in New Zealand, so it's already Saturday for me.
Yeah.
So really pleased to be here.
Great. So this is Steve. In case you're not familiar with us, this is me. I'm Susan. You can reach out to us if you would like. Our Twitter handles are there. And also, if you are just joining us, I had suggested that if you have any tips that you would like to share with us, we're happy to hear about those. You can just type them into the question box and we'll try and share them with everyone at the end. Or if you want to email us later with tips that you have for using BuzzSumo, that would be great. We anticipate that the webinar today will take just about 30 minutes of presentation time, and then we're going to just open it up for questions. So if you do have questions, just type them in and we will circle back to those. We're going to just show you some of our favorite tips for using the tool. We will also send you a link to a recording of the webinar, so you'll get that in your inbox, although probably it's going to be the beginning of the week until that goes out. So if you're not familiar with BuzzSumo, we help content marketers, publishers, and PR firms create better content through research, amplification, and monitoring. We think of this as a three-step process where you're researching content and then thinking through how to amplify it, and by that we mean increase its distribution by working with various people or influencers to get your content seen by a broader audience. And then we also help you with the monitoring of your content. So what we wanted to cover today is just some different ways that we've found to use the tool that we hope will be helpful for you. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. My tips are to match your keywords to the social networks where those keywords perform best, to use alerts within BuzzSumo to add a geographic focus to your searches. I'm going to show you how to integrate your alerts with Slack. So if you're bypassing email, you can get your alerts delivered via Slack. And I'm also going to show you how to use Most Shared to filter and refine articles that you would analyze in content analysis forms, and also how to work with the content analysis forms and get specifics back in the Most Shared section of the site. So the first tip I had is if you are writing content on a topic, you probably have a selection of keywords that you're working with. For example, if you're writing content on data management, for example, you may have looked up different keywords related to that. I just realized that you'd probably have spelled it right, but anyway. So when you do a keyword search within Google, you'll come up with different ideas for keywords that might perform well in your content. So what I would suggest doing is after you have identified keywords, like if you're looking for data management, you might also be interested in data warehousing, take those different keywords and run them through a content analysis report. Here's why. A lot of times, different versions of your keywords will perform more strongly on one social network than another. So this is an example of a content analysis report for the term data backup. And this is showing us that this term is more heavily shared on Facebook than other networks. But if I do a search for data management, I find that it is more heavily shared on LinkedIn. So depending on what the goals of my campaign are, I might want to change up the different words that I'm using in the title or the topic of my content to match them to the network where those terms perform best. This is another example. This is a content analysis report for digital content marketing, and you'll notice here that it's performing best on Facebook. But if I look at the term just simply content marketing, it's performing best on Twitter. So again, my first tip is if you're working with a selection of keywords, before you post that content into different social networks, run those keywords through our content analysis reports to see if you're likely to get better results on one network by changing up the words a little bit. Now, Steve is going to tell you a little bit about one of his favorite tips for BuzzSumo.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Yeah, I'm going to pass over. I've got a few tips to run through. Share my screen. Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 I'm going to run through, and then Susan's going to jump back with hers. The first one I wanted to talk about was just to see who's amplifying content on Facebook, because you're probably all aware that if you do a search on BuzzSumo, I'll do one here. Let's do Donald Trump, as he seems to be in the news a little bit at the moment. So I can search for the most shared content on Donald Trump, and I'm sure you all know, you can view the shares on Twitter. So here we've got 4,500 shares on Twitter. We can view those just by clicking View Sharers, and you can then see who shared that content on Twitter. You can export that list. You can resort it by average retweet rates and things like that. So it's good to see it for Twitter. One thing that people ask a lot is, I'd really like to see who shared on Facebook. It's hard to do that, and it's particularly hard. We can't obviously see private posts on Facebook. But just a tip of something that I do, which may be useful, if you take the post title, so here I'm just going to copy part of the post title because it's quite a long one. But if you take the post title and go to the Facebook Analyzer and then copy in that post title, generally people use that within their Facebook post. So I can now see a good selection of people who've shared this particular article on Facebook. So whilst we don't have the full list of sharers as we would do on Twitter, we can now see, I can keep scrolling down, the people who've shared this particular article on Facebook. So I can see the public pages that are helping to amplify and bump that piece of content. So for example here, that had another 15,000 shares, this first one. This one had 7,000 further shares. This had 2,700 further shares. So I can see which pages are boosting a particular article on Facebook simply by copying the post title. So that was my first tip. If you want to see what pages are sharing content on Facebook, just try typing in the post title, and often that will work for you, and so you can see how that's working. If you haven't had a play with Facebook Analyzer, do use it a lot, because there's so much interesting data here. If I stick with my Donald Trump theme and just analyze his page, it can be scary or not, depending on your views on Donald Trump, but you can see his most interacted with posts. But if you flip to analysis, I like seeing the trends in Facebook, so we can see the estimated monthly interactions with his posts. And in December, after he made his comments about keeping out Muslims, etc., from the US, he shot up to almost 20 million interactions with his posts at that point. So the trends are really interesting to see. So do play with the Facebook Analyzer. But if you want to see who shared a post on Facebook, that's one way you can do it. The next thing I was going to show you is really how to take BuzzSumo a little bit further. And so if you wanted to analyze headlines and things like that, I was going to show you how you can do that with a few simple tools actually that are outside of BuzzSumo, which maybe we should add in. So let's say, for example, I wanted to see the most shared posts on LinkedIn in the last 6 months. I can see the most shared posts on LinkedIn. I'm sure you all know that. I can export that data, and it's really worth playing with the exports, because if you export it, you'll get this. I'll just flip to it. I've exported it already. So here are all my posts from LinkedIn. I can go up to the top here, and you'll see that you get loads of data in the export. But what you get, and what I've highlighted here, is the title of the post. So I'm now seeing the titles of the post. So I've highlighted the top 1,000 titles from LinkedIn. So these are the top 1,000 most shared articles on LinkedIn. So I've highlighted those and copied them. Yes, I hope I have. What I can then do is go to tools outside of BuzzSumo, and you'll get the slides, so you don't need to write down the links here, but here's one simple tool for text analysis. I tend to use a statistical tool called R to do all my analysis, but if you don't want to use that, and it takes a bit of time to learn it, you can literally just paste those post titles. Oops. Of course, I forgot to copy it. That's good. So just Control-C and copy that. I can paste all my post titles here, and then I can hit Process Text. And this is just a free online tool, but it will take all those headlines and analyze them. And I like to look at things like the top phrases containing 3 words. So for those top posts, we can see the future of was the most used 3-word phrase. So the future of, and that doesn't surprise me because LinkedIn, lots of people like to know about trends and things like that. But if I go down to the top 2-word phrases, I can see that 57 of the posts had how-tos. And 20 of them had in 2016. And I think that's again because LinkedIn people really like trends, they like practical posts of how to be successful at work, they like trends, etc. So just a simple way in which you can take headlines out of BuzzSumo for the top performing posts for any topic, and you can start to analyze them in text form. Or another way I like to do it is use this word cloud generator. I really like Jason Davis's word cloud. You can use lots of other word cloud generators out there, but I really like his stuff. And here what I did was I took the top post for a term called Brexit, which for those of you in the US may be less familiar with. It's a term people use talking about the potential for Britain to leave the European Union. I took the top posts, I've got them over here. I'll just show you them over here. So yeah, so these are my Brexit articles. I copied the top headlines here, as I did with the other article. And then I pasted them into this text below, and it just generates you a nice word cloud. So I could do this for Donald Trump as well if I wanted. And word clouds sometimes can give you stuff that's interesting. Sometimes they can just be an interesting way to show clients what's happening on a topic. But I can see here that terms migrants are coming out really big in terms of the top titles around Brexit, and that's a controversial issue. Calais, that's where we get a number of illegal refugees coming in or illegal immigrants into the UK. So I can start to see some of those top topics coming through in the form of a word cloud. So what I would say is, do use the BuzzSumo exit, extraction tool, so that you can sort of export all the data that you want and then have a play with it in other tools. So it's really good to take BuzzSumo and use some of that data elsewhere. Hopefully in time we'll add some of those tools in for you so that you can just use them within BuzzSumo. Yeah, at the moment, just take the data, have a play with it, and use some of the external tools. And if you know better tools than the ones I was showing you there, do let me know. I'm always keen to learn and find out a little bit more. But yeah, so that's what I do around those topics. The next thing I was going to show you a couple of more final things from me, really. One was just how I use the outreach list, and Susan's going to talk to you a lot more about this. You'll know that as you find people across BuzzSumo, you can now add them. I should probably just show you. You can add them to an outreach list. So if I view sharers for any topic, I'll just show you how you can add them to an outreach list. So you'll see here, save influencer. So I can save this influencer to any of my lists. So craft beer list if need be, but SEO influencers. And once I have my list, I'll show you over here, I have my outreach lists. So I have lots of different lists here, but let's choose the BuzzSumo influencers. So you can see I've got 46 people in my BuzzSumo influencer list who are people that are actively help promote BuzzSumo. They tend to be some of the larger influencers. And so I want to build up relations with them, and I can obviously use the tool to see conversations, and Susan will talk to you about looking at conversations. So I can see questions that those influencers are asking, and I can actively reply to those. But I also just like to click on content, and this shows me, for the 46 influencers in my list, everything that they're publishing, so that I can actively see if I want to share that. So John from Duct Tape Marketing, I might want to share that. Overcoming Content Overload by Neil Patel, I might want to share that. Rand's Whiteboard Friday, you should probably see that this would normally be saying X minutes ago. It's showing a day ago because I'm already in Saturday down here in New Zealand. So the Whiteboard Friday did take place yesterday. So I really like to use this to keep me on top of what they're doing. I don't need to go back and look at their websites necessarily. I can just see and get alerted to what they're publishing. And that helps me just build the relationships and keep making sure that I'm seeing what they're writing and I can comment on it, but also I can share it for them as well. So that was my other tip. And then my final tip before I pass you back through to Susan is on monitoring. I like to see how we're doing relative to competition. I'm sure we all do. So I use the alerts to have a look here. So I can see for the past month mentions of BuzzSumo on the web. But what I want to do is maybe compare how many links we're gaining with links that other people are gaining. So I've set up an alert for links to BuzzSumo. And if you don't do this, I can really recommend it. So it's a simple link to buzzsumo.com. So every time somebody links to us, we get it show, we get an alert, and the alerts will appear below, as you know, if you use BuzzSumo. I can see all the individual alerts for each article that's linking to us, but I can see the trends here. But what I can also do is compare it to somebody else. So, for example, I could compare this, if I just scroll down, I've got so many alerts set up here, to my backlinks. I could compare it to how are we doing against Marketo. So, and then what this will show me is, actually, it's remarkably similar. So the number of links we're acquiring every day relative to Marketo. And links today, we've only gained 12 today, they've gained 20 today. But over the last 30 days, I can see that BuzzSumo at the top right here, we've gained 586 links and they've gained 517. And you're not limited to 2. I could find another link. I could compare somebody else here. So I've set up a backlink to FollowerWonk, which is an influencer, a tool just to see how we compare with them. And I can see that FollowerWonk doesn't get many links on a daily basis at all. But I'm always interested to see how we're doing relative to somebody else that's relevant to us, and are we performing well, not so well. And if they're performing better than we are, I can also then just obviously have a look at where they're gaining links. So if Marketo were performing much, much better than us, I could just go and look at their links. And now I can see every article that's linking to them. And so I can see where they're getting good links from. Maybe these are opportunities for me to talk to the people who run these sites or blogs to link to ours. But it's good for me to try and keep up to date with what's happening. So they were just a few of my links. You don't need to worry about the URLs. They're in the slides for the 2 tools that I showed you. So you'll get those. And you'll also get slides which just give an overview of what I've just showed you. So I hope that's of interest. I thought I'd just try and show some tips which you may or may not be using on BuzzSumo. But as with Susan, we're happy to answer any questions when Susan's run through her tips as well. So back to you, Susan.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. Yeah, he showed me the word cloud tip earlier this week, and I was so excited about that. So great. Let me go ahead and turn my screen on. Here we go. And I'm going to narrow this up so you're just looking at my slides. All right, so here are a review of Steve's tips. You can see who amplified content on Twitter and on Facebook, analyze headlines with word clouds and textual analysis, track links and mentions over time, and review and share influencer content. So let's see. I wanted to show you, let's see. Sorry about that. I need to just get to the right slide. I seem to have gotten lost in our slides, so hold on there for just 1 second, and I'll get back to where we're supposed to be, I think. We could do this backwards, but we won't do that. All right, so we do have a couple of questions while I'm flipping through this. I'd like to suggest that if you have any questions, you can enter those in the question box. And now I will walk you through how to add a geographic focus to your searches using the alert section of BuzzSumo. Now, if you're familiar with BuzzSumo and you use it a lot, you probably began using it with the most shared section of the site. When you're looking for content in a most shared search, if you enter a keyword like data, we're going to search for that keyword in the title or the topic of text. I'm sorry, in the title or the topic of the content that we find online. So if you need to add a geographic emphasis to that, you can filter by top-level domain country codes. If, though, you're in the US and you wanted to add a city-level kind of filter to your content, you can do that using the alert section of the site. The reason alerts work better for that is because we change up the methodology a little bit in the alert section, and we look for your search terms not only in the title or the topic of the content we find, but in the text as well. So if you're searching for a term like the one I have set up here, concert, and you also want it to include Dallas, we're going to look for the name of that city in the text of the article as well as in the title and topic. So you'll have a better experience finding content about concerts in Dallas using an alert, because a lot of times you won't have that city name in the title or the topic of the content, but you will have it with the dates, with the date line in the article itself. So this is an example of how to set these up. You would use the word concert in your alert, and then you would edit the alert to say that the results also need to contain the word Dallas. And this is what that alert looks like. This is the alert with Dallas, and you're noticing that we've gotten 130 mentions today for concerts that also include the word Dallas. Now, this is what it looks like if you take that Dallas filter out of there. So definitely having the word Dallas will narrow the scope of your results and help you to add a geographic sort of filter to your results. So that's one example. This is another one. This is for ergonomics or functional physical therapy with a filter in place. And this, I'm sorry, that one had no filter, no place filter, and this one was filtered to a specific location. So the results get a little bit more manageable and are able to be targeted toward the locations that you're interested in. So if your content has a really local focus, you might want to experiment with using the alert section of the site to add that geographic focus. Now, the next little trick that I wanted to show you is you can integrate your alerts and your trending feeds with Slack channels. So if you are using Slack or any other inter-office communication system that includes the option to integrate RSS feeds, you can generate RSS feeds in the alert section of BuzzSumo and in the trending section of BuzzSumo. So the way I envision this is if you have a team of people, maybe you have an editor for certain types of content, you could set up an alert for that content, highly target the alert so that it matches the criteria of content that you're looking for. And then instead of having the people on your team receive an email when there's content that matches your criteria, they could just have that information go right into the Slack channel where they're already working throughout the day anyway. I know for us, Slack is one of the first things that I turn on when I get to my desk in the morning to see what's happened overnight. So this is how you would set those RSS feeds up with Slack integration. First, you would go to your alerts, click on RSS, and just grab the RSS feed here. Then you go into your Slack channel and you need to configure the RSS. Basically, that's not very hard. You just click on configure and you add the feed, and then you say what channel you would like to have it posted to, and then you subscribe to the feed. And the next thing you know, you have those alerts. This is one that's coming directly to my Slack channel. It's pulling content in so I can see it as it gets posted. So keep in mind that you can integrate your alerts and our trending feeds with your Slack channels if that would be helpful for you. All right, now the other thing that I wanted to show you is you can also use the alerts to monitor breakout content about a topic. So here's how I would suggest doing this. If you are maybe handling public relations for a topic or for a company. I'm just going to use Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the football teams in the NFL in the US. And the first thing you would need to know is what's the average number of shares content about your client receives. So what I've done is I've gone into a content analysis report and I've entered the term Jacksonville Jaggers, and I have done the report to find out content about the Jacksonville Jaggers gets 75 average shares. Okay, so now I have in my mind the average number of shares that content about my client gets. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into an alert and I'm going to set up an alert for the Jacksonville Jaggers. And because I want to know anytime they're mentioned in this content, I'm going to leave it on the default setting, which is to search the title, topic, topic and text of the articles. And because I'm looking now for breakout content, I'm going to go ahead and get a real-time email alert whenever that happens. And I've just entered minimum shares here as 75. So what this alert is going to do now is let me know anytime there's a piece of content about my client that has gotten shared more than the average number of times. That can be a really helpful way to just keep an eye on the types of content that are out there about people and monitor any breakout content about a subject. I would suggest, setting up two of these. This is the breakout alert. I would probably also have an alert just for all content, that low hum in the background, and then also have this alert set to let you know anytime a post gets more attention than normal. This is an example of one of those alerts. This was 196 mentions today, and I can then see where the mentions are. So that's the other thing that I can do. This was the mentions for all content about the Jacksonville Jaguars. So if there were a situation where I needed to respond to content, I could use this page to see what the content is and also to kind of measure how many social shares it's gotten. All right, another tip is that you can use the most shared section of our site to filter and refine the articles that you're going to analyze in content analysis. A lot of times people will ask me in webinars, okay, how do I get started? And I tend to encourage them to go to the most shared section of the site and begin looking for content about their topic. And I think the best way to do that is really to begin your searches fairly broadly. So what I would suggest doing is just search for a broad topic that's related to your content. Now, I was walking through this process with one of our clients the other day, and he was working with insurers in the United Kingdom, specifically who work with nonprofit organizations. So when we did a search for the most shared content on insurers, a couple of the things that came up immediately were not relevant to him. Two of the top 5 were about Obamacare, which doesn't apply to his situation. So what you can do is once you've seen what those results look like, you can use those to develop some filters. So the filters that we put in place for him were minus Obamacare. So we have insurers without Obamacare, insurers without Obama, and then insurers without auto. So what I do is I begin in the most shared section of the site and I enter one filter and I look at the results. And then if there's still not what I want, I enter another filter and then another until the top 20 at least reflects the type of content that I'm interested in. And then without changing anything in the search bar, I just select the content analysis tab, and BuzzSumo automatically carries all of those filters into a content analysis report for me. So I don't have to reset those filters in this search. And I also know now that the types of information that I get in this search are very relevant to the types of content that I'm producing. So this is an example of a highly filtered search that we did once we had those filters in place. Okay, so the last tip that I have for today is to use outreach lists for streamlined communication with your influencers. Steve touched on this a minute ago when he was describing how you can see the content that your influencers have produced. If you are looking for influencers, you begin in the Twitter influencers section of BuzzSumo. And I just did this search the other day for Twitter influencers who are interested in Facebook and also journalists. And I found Felicity, who was not on our content marketing journalist list, but she has a good number of average retweets and looks like someone who's interested in replying to people on Twitter based on her reply ratio. So I added her to our content marketing journalist list. Now, once you have your outreach list created, you can go into your outreach list section and select the list of of people that you're interested in working with. I think the reason that I have appreciated this section of our site is because this has kind of helped me to stay focused and very intentional about communicating with influencers. I have a list for people that I have collaborated on webinars with. They're people who have been helpful in creating content for me or for BuzzSumo, and so I want to keep in touch with them and keep promoting their content. So I have this webinar partners list, and when I'm thinking about that part of my job, I can go into the webinars partners list and open up conversations. The conversations tab gives me the option to see any questions that those influencers are asking. It gives me the option to see their popular tweets and their latest tweets. And I can interact with them directly from this section of BuzzSumo. So I can, as you see, I've just kind of clicked the heart button here to like this tweet. I can also retweet people's content. I can respond to their questions directly from BuzzSumo. Now, one thing about doing that, yesterday I was trying this with some of the content marketing journalists, and every time I've sat down to work through this list and do that communication, I end up having a really nice conversation with people. So I would suggest getting those lists set up, and begin to add this to your workflow. It's definitely helped me to be very intentional about communicating with influencers. All right. So I think that is the end of the tips that I have. We wanted to open this up for any questions or any ideas that you may have about how best to use BuzzSumo. So, Steve, are you back on the line?
Yeah, I'm back on the line. So yeah, Susan said, thanks, Susan. They're great tips, and we really did this just to sort of do a sort of an out of the ordinary presentation, because we do lots of standard walkthroughs, and we thought we'd just share some of the tips that Susan and I use. But we know you can be very creative in the way you use BuzzSumo, so we're also keen to get any tips from you, because you may use it in a different way to the way that we use it. But also, if there are any types of webinars or types of areas of focus you'd like us to look at, so there was a question just now about video, for example. I mean, we can run specific webinars on specific topics, for example. So if you've got ideas of things that we should focus on in the future, that would be great as well. But we'd love to just say, know any tips or any things that you're doing with the tool, which others may not be. But also, if you just have any questions about BuzzSumo, sort of now's your chance. Just throw out any questions, and we'll do our best to answer. And if you can't think of any questions today, do feel free to just mail Susan or I. We're just Susan or Steve at buzzsumo.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So we're always available for questions. But yeah, if you have any questions today, let us know, and we'll try and show you how we can answer them.
I've just switched my screen over. This is for Linda, who asked about analyzing video content. Here are a couple things that I've done. In the trending section of our site, I've set up an alert just for trending content on YouTube. So what I did was I selected add trending feed, and then I chose domains and just entered youtube.com. So now I have a trending feed dedicated to YouTube, and I can use it to monitor any content that is being shared more rapidly than others on YouTube. So this is trending content on YouTube, and I can apply trending filters to it as well. It's really interesting to me. A lot of times YouTube is on a different path totally than the all content section. I'll notice that all content is having a slow day and YouTube is having a fantastic day. The other thing that you can do as far as analyzing video content is you can use YouTube as the domain that you are interested in analyzing. So this will show you the most shared content from YouTube over the past week. You can also see, that was the past year, this is the past week. So if you wanted to see the most shared puppy video on YouTube this week, you would combine the topic puppy with the word YouTube, and we'll pull up the most shared YouTube content. You can do the same with Vine. So if you wanted to do vine.co, we can show you any new Vine content on puppies, and you can do the same thing with Vimeo. The last tip I have for doing that is if you wanted to do cat content, You could also just select video only content from our content types. What we do in that case is we identify content coming from sites like Vimeo, Vine, and YouTube as video content. And we also look for content that has the word video in the URL or the title of the content. So I hope that'll get you started, Linda, on analyzing videos.
Thanks, Susan. That's great. And Jay just asked a question about live digital display. So I think if you flip to your trending now screen, Jay, I know a couple of agencies who use this. If you're familiar with our trending content section, you can set up a trending content feed for any topic or for any domain or series of domains. So you could set one up, as I've done, for all UK newspapers, or you could set it up just for articles on Donald Trump, for example, or content marketing, or anything you want. You can set up trending feeds. I've got some set up for UK football clubs, which are very popular and that supporters use to just keep track of what's happening, because we literally update the content all the time. We're crawling virtually the whole of the web and showing you what's the most trending content for a topic. But I know some agencies that have taken this dashboard and literally they have it presented on a wall, a big TV screen on a wall, and they've just added, which we should probably add, but they've added a Chrome plugin so that it automatically refreshes. BuzzSumo doesn't auto refresh at the moment, so we may need to look at that, but you can have a Chrome plugin that auto refreshes the screen all the time. So I know there are a couple of agencies that have this trending scheme screen for very specific topics actually presented on the walls of their offices, so you can actually see as stuff is trending. And say we pick up stuff all the time, so the trending feeds are really interesting. And so I've got one for all I've got one set up for all domains for UK newspapers, and so it just shows me the trending content right now across all UK newspapers, for example. And I just flip through that at various times during the day. So yeah, so you can use that definitely for a sort of live digital display, and quite a lot of our clients do.
I just realized, Steve, that I can access your trending feeds. So let's see if I can show those for you.
You can choose Arsenal Football Club or something.
Okay,
but,
yeah, here's Arsenal. This is
it's Arsenal, yeah.
There you go. Now you can get your.
If you're interested in Premier League soccer in the UK, this is a club called Arsenal, and this will show you any article that's trending about Arsenal today from any source. So it really helps you keep up to date with particular football teams or particular niche topics. And what a lot of our agencies do, I know, is they have the filter for 2 hours. So they show not what was the most trending in the last 24 hours, or the trending now and most shared in the last 24 hours, but they have it down to 2 hours, because 2 hours is the really recent stuff that's coming up. So you can see that on trending now, there's just one article there on Arsenal. So and that's good, because then the story pops up. Anything that's trending in the last 2 hours pops up, and you're instantly aware of it.
That's good. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions right now. Do you?
Jens asked, will the webinar be available later? I think it's being recorded, isn't it? So we can send you a copy of the webinar recording.
Yeah, I would.
I see you replied to that, yeah.
I'll get that out probably on Monday. I usually like to slap a header on it and a few things, so we'll get that out to you on Monday.
Yeah, it's also the best way to engage with influencers to get your content shared. The first thing I'd say is I don't think you start that way. I think when you're building relationships with influencers, I think the key is to identify the influencers that are really relevant for you and your content. But your starting point is, how do you help them? Not how do they help you, how do you help them? So the starting point, and I will sort of re-emphasize this, is, find influence, how can you help them? It might be you add valuable commentary onto their blog, you might share their content, you might be able to provide them with resources. For example, you might be able to provide them with other things. But the key is how can you help your influencers, and gradually you build a relationship over time, which would include you engaging with them either on their blog or on Twitter, for example, replying to questions, which is, I know how Susan and I use our own outreach list conversations feature, share their content where it's relevant, etc. And then over time, you would hope that they would see your content and share. We would never go out there and say, would you share my content? I would never do that. And I do find it frustrating. Occasionally people will mail me and say, will you share this? If I know the person, that's fair enough, but often I don't. So I think you have to build the relationship, and it builds naturally then, and they will share your content providing it's relevant to their audience. So I think the key is to start by building the relationship, sharing relevant content, and then hopefully in time they'll reciprocate and share your content.
That's great.
I mean, once you know a relationship as well, you can obviously, another way to do it, once you know an influencer quite well, is you could do some joint content, which is ideal. You could do a joint webinar, you could do an interview post with them, and then they will obviously share it as part of being the co-creator. But you need to have built a relationship first.
Yeah, good tips.
Great. Okay.
All
Well,
right.
as there are other questions, we can draw things to a close. But as I'm really keen to get your feedback, whether this sort of webinar is helpful or not to you. And so we thought we'd do something slightly different and just share some of our top tips. But yeah, any ideas from you, we're really grateful to receive them, and keen to run more webinars. So let us know the sorts of things you'd be interested in.
That sounds great. Steve, it's always good to talk with you, and we appreciate everyone who's